Story 1. I dated a guy who was on Chopped. He said it's not as rushed, that they are allowed to have sips of alcohol if they're using it in the food. The thing that bothered him was that they were strongly encouraged to take swipes at each other, and he's a really nice guy. Story 2. I had a cousin win my country's version of Survivor. He finished the final competition about 45 minutes before everyone else, but the producers cut it in a way that made it seem like he barely won, just a few inches ahead of second place. But I guess that's to be expected with reality television. Another fun fact: the host of the show tried to get all of the women to gang up and get my cousin voted out, and it was so bad that the producers had to step in and tell him to stop. That part didn't get aired, of course. Also, the host of the show, who was a respected television host in my country at the time, was a raging alcoholic during the whole trip. Another thing I remembered was that they had to halt the shooting of the show and get the contestants into hotels on the mainland for around 2 months because a lot of the people got hit by some kind of virus or bacteria that made many of them extremely sick. Story 3. I won the Showcase Showdown on The Price is Right back in 2012. The day is long. I started standing in line around 6 a.m., then you're put through quick interviews. They ask what your name is, where you're from, and what you do for work. I have no idea why they picked me because my answers were pretty unenthusiastic, as I was just happy to be in the audience. My guess was that I was a young 23-year-old woman with decent legs. You truly do not know if you will be called to come on down until the moment arrives. Yes, the wheel is heavy. After the show, you're pulled into a back room to discuss prize acceptance, paperwork, and taxes. You also sign a non-disclosure agreement declaring you will not tell others the outcome of your episode, which airs 3 months after filming. The prizes are truly nice and high quality. I won 3 international trips in the showcase, and the locations and accommodations were incredible. Story 4. I was on The Price is Right. The stage is much smaller, and the colors, including Bob's makeup, were much brighter than what you see on television. They took my social security number in case I was picked for tax purposes. Everyone said to act enthusiastically to get picked, but I couldn't fake it, not my personality. Despite that, I got picked. I must have been wearing a good outfit for television or something. I ended up winning a lot of money on Plinko. Yes, the spinning wheel is heavy. I did not kiss Bob. They kind of suggested you do it, but there was no way I was going to. I just wanted to get off that stage and call my mom. Story 5. As a phone-a-friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there is no rule against searching online. Instead of studying, I practiced searching all kinds of esoteric subjects for a few weeks. I helped my friend win $50,000. Story 6. I was in the audience for Deal or No Deal once. There were a couple of running gags that didn't make the TV cut. They also took the secrecy of the briefcase contents very seriously. One of the briefcases got dropped and it opened. I don't think anyone saw the number inside, but that was enough for every one of them to be taken back behind the stage and re-randomized. Story 7. My wife and I tried out for Supermarket Sweep in 2021. We had a Zoom call with the casting people but didn't get selected. I think, 1. We got too many answers right. We weren't enthusiastic enough. They really emphasized this, like jump up and down and scream, give us more, more. It was exhausting. Story 8. No one hails the cash cab. It's all a setup, though the contestants don't necessarily know they're about to be on cash cab. They also pull you out of the cab after the initial scheme, set everything up, then send you on your way. You also get a check, not the actual cash. Story 9. On Jeopardy! There are tiny lights surrounding the game board that are not visible on camera. You cannot ring in until the lights flash, and if you try before the lights flash, you get locked out for a couple of seconds. That is why you see people rapidly clicking the signaling device. Story 10. I was on a show where someone in the audience blurted out the answer before I could. They stopped production, removed the audience member, took me off stage, reset the entire round, and started over. The kicker is I knew the answer anyway, and the new round had a category I knew absolutely nothing about. The audience member cost me $30,000. Story 11. I've been on 6 game shows from 1983 until around 1997. They mostly shot 5 episodes each day, so it's a long day. They start with reviewing rules, your wardrobe, and signing contracts. Eventually, you play practice games on the actual set. Food is provided all day long. Generally, episodes were shot 3 months before airing, and I didn't receive any money or prizes until 1 month after airing. Of course, you pay taxes on any prizes or cash. You can refuse any as well. I refused a trip to Australia. Most travel prizes are for off-season, and the window was only 2 months. My wife would have been 8 and 9 months pregnant in that window, so she did not feel like being on such a long flight. Not what you asked, but other times I've posted this on Reddit, I got asked what shows I was on. I'll only mention the 3 where I won. Catchphrase. Now you see it. The weakest link, daytime version. Story 12. Not me on the show, but my dad. In the early days of Countdown, during the Richard Whiteley era in the mid-1980s, if the numbers game was particularly tricky, it wasn't solved by Carol Vorderman immediately at the end of the round as portrayed on television. Rather, she would work on it as the program continued and would record her solution later, which would then be edited in to make it look like she had solved it there and then. If it was a really difficult one, then Carol didn't solve it at all. It was a behind-the-scenes guy called Michael Wiley who worked it out, and then Carol would present it as though she had solved it herself. Story 13. I was a winner on Wheel of Fortune 10 years ago. There's only one big wheel, and they have to transport it to other taping locations if not in Los Angeles, where I was, and that thing is heavy. As part of preparation for the actual taping, they have everyone practice the proper way to spin it. Left hand grips the padded rail in front of you, right hand pulls the wheel toward you, and continues the momentum to push the wheel along its spin. They tell us not to try aiming for a specific space because it's too obvious and too hard to control. Story 14. Not me, but an acquaintance was taped for, "Are you smarter than a 5th grader?" He was definitely smarter than a 5th grader. That doesn't make for good television. It never went to air. Story 15. I was on Cash Cab. They actually select and pre-screen people under the guise of a separate show. They use this to gauge your knowledge and tailor the questions to your ability. As an example, one of my questions was, what large archipelago is made of over 15,000 islands? Another team on the same episode got, what social media platform has a blue F as part of their logo? When you show up for the other show, they tell you there is an issue with the location and you need to take a cab to another site. Up pulls the cab and blammo. Story 16. I was on Jeopardy a long time ago, and 2 of my behind-the-scenes memories are, the production team was so supportive and kind, and I had to stand on a box. I won the last 2 games of the day, returned a couple of weeks later after a tournament, and failed hard. Story 17. I was on Ink Master, which is not exactly a game show for human canvases, but it involves a prize, so I'm posting. The show was set in New York City and even had city backdrops in the opener, but it was filmed in a studio in New Jersey. The artists all had personas to play, selected by the producers, and did their best to abide. Most of the judges barely stuck around set. They would film their parts in quick succession then leave, and they edited it to make it seem like they were always there. The art was real, but there was much more time spent on deciding than depicted. I remember it taking forever to film the skull pics because we had to be given the skulls with the name on the bottom, film that wait, then read the name slowly. It took 2 days to film a 30-minute episode. All in all, it was an amazing experience. Story 18. I tried out for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire years ago. I had to be in Manhattan first thing in the morning to take a test in a room of maybe 50 people. They quickly graded the test while asking who had the longest drive in and who was the youngest or oldest. Results came in and probably 35 people were out the door, not scoring high enough. I and everyone who stayed back were told we would meet with the producers of the show, and our pictures were taken. During the interview, I talked about being a veteran and tried to sound interesting. I mentioned that the only question I struggled with was about which cosmetic company Halle Berry is a spokesperson for. We wrapped it up, and I was told I would be notified if I would be put in the contestant pool. A week later, I got the no thank you card. Oh, and on my way to the train station, every other picture was of Halle Berry and Revlon. Story 19 was on Let's Make a Deal. The camera lenses tend to make the studio look larger than it is in real life. I was surprised how much smaller it felt sitting in the audience. They do a group interview before the show starts to help pick people and weed out those who won't make for good television. They have costumes you can pick from, but if you bring your own, you're more likely to get picked. They'll make you ride a bus to the studio, so make sure your costume can fit in the seat. I learned that the hard way. They tell everyone to stay smiling and hype the whole time because if they picked you from the interview process, they can change their mind at the last minute before Wayne calls you if they think the cameras will pan to you and you look unhappy. This makes everyone stay really energetic the whole time, which I thought was clever. Lastly, I know this makes me sound like a psycho, but Wayne Brady smells amazing. Story 20. I was on Slime Time Live as a kid in the early 2000s, back when they filmed it at Universal Studios Florida. They picked the contestants that were going to play in advance and then put us in the crowd, announced us on air, and told us to act surprised. The host was a jerk and wouldn't talk to the contestants off air. The two co-hosts were a lot nicer, though. Also, the slime is cold and takes multiple washings to get out of your hair. Story 21. I was on Mastermind's Tug of Words and soon the 1% Club. I won $10,000 on Tug of Words, and the other two I did really well, but I didn't make any money. One of the things that is very surprising is how long it actually takes to shoot an episode. It's 22 minutes of airtime, but it takes a little over an hour, maybe an hour and a half. We do the commercial breaks live. But a lot of the game is just shooting reactions and doing extra takes when the game show host flubs a line. About the same amount of time was spent shooting the game show host rereading stuff as it was us playing the game. One thing about the 1% Club that was interesting is that they asked a question and it's silent. You have 30 seconds or whatever to answer on your iPad. Then they don't let you know if you get it right or wrong, but they reshoot the exact same scene, but the host makes jokes. They do this so you can concentrate on answering, and then they splice the two together later. Since that show had 100 people, it was definitely the longest shoot. It was about 4 hours. Luckily, I was in the game until the very end, so I wasn't like one of those people who missed the first question who had to sit there for 3.5 hours doing nothing. You also have to get there insanely early and wait. The call time for all three of my shows was like 6:30, I think. And then you maybe shoot around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. You're pretty tired and exhausted all day because you probably didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. For me, because I came up from San Diego and because I had to get up at 4:30 to get ready. Finally, I'd say that they actually do want you to win, and they try as hard as they can to prep you to do well. They honestly want charismatic, funny, charming people to entertain. They have it in the budget for you to win. It's the advertiser's money. I was also in 2 different commercials. One for Tug of Words and Masterminds. That was pretty cool. I'm even on some commercial ad for some word game that has nothing to do with Tug of Words. They just used my footage from my episode to advertise a bad app. I've gotten tagged on that about 100 times on Facebook. Oh, that's the last thing. You don't get paid until it airs on TV because that's where your money comes from. I did one show in October and got paid in February. If you want to check out my Tug of Words, just go to YouTube and search Tug of Words. I'm the first video. My roommate Jim and I won the $10,000. Story 22. A friend of mine interned at a radio station in high school. I got to help him with some of the rush hour time slot productions. When the disc jockey did the caller number 9 is the winner thing, he would just pick the first person with the most upbeat and radio-friendly voice. They splice and edit the sound bites together while the music or commercials are playing to make it sound like they were the 9th caller when they were usually the 2nd or 3rd. Story 23. I was a contestant on The Weakest Link, the American version with the main lady. It was their high school episode. What you don't see is a huge clock counting down right in front of all the contestants. It's very nerve-wracking. Also, they told us she picks on the one she likes. And boy, she loved me. So much never made it to air. But it was so much fun. Also, none of us were random people that tried out. We were all agency kids. Whether modeling or acting, all of us had representation. It helped the process with minors so they knew we were screen tested. Story 24. I wasn't on a game show, but I went to a taping of Wheel of Fortune. They taped 3 shows, and I was absolutely exhausted by the end of it. You never realize just how much the audience has to clap during that show until you have to do it. Story 25. I was on The Price is Right. I never expected to be picked and ended up winning the showcase. There is no trading your prizes for cash. It's take it or leave it, and you have to pay sales and income tax on the winnings. Story 26. Not me, but a coworker of mine was on The Price is Right and won the showcase showdown. They made her redo her reaction to winning because the first time was not good enough. She could also pick and choose which of the prizes she wanted. She could tell everyone that she was on the show but not the results until after it aired, though I am assuming that is standard.